Have you ever been in a meeting where someone gets subtly mocked or questioned in a way that feels off, and the whole room just goes quiet? You feel your stomach tighten, but somehow nobody says anything, and later you wonder why you didn't either. That silence is not an accident. Today, we're decoding the psychology of workplace bullying. Welcome to Mind Decoded. I'm Dr. Ann.
And I'm Zach. Dr. Ann, what are we unpacking today?
We're unpacking workplace bullying, the adult version of schoolyard bullying, but far more invisible. Today, we'll look at what it really is, why kind and intelligent people stay silent or miss it entirely, and what targets and bystanders can do.
I have to admit, when I hear the phrase workplace bullying, I picture someone yelling, maybe slamming a door. But I have a feeling you're going to tell me it's usually not that obvious.
That's the first misconception. Most workplace bullying doesn't look like a movie scene. It looks like exclusion. Constant small humiliations, information being withheld, credit being stolen, or someone being set up to fail in ways that are hard to prove.
Okay, so less shouting, more slow erosion.
Exactly. Think of it like a river wearing down a rock. No single wave feels like an attack, but over months it changes the shape of the rock. The psychological term you'll see in research is mobbing. Swedish psychologist Heinz Lehmann mapped this in the 1980s. He found that subtle, repeated acts can be just as damaging as overt aggression, sometimes more, because the target starts to doubt their own perception.
Wait, that's interesting. So it's not about intensity, it's about the pattern.
Yes, a single bad day might be conflict. Bullying is sustained, targeted, and usually involves a power imbalance, whether formal or social. Lehman's research showed that after a certain point, the target may experience health effects, sleep problems, anxiety, deep self-doubt, not because they're weak, but because their brain has been in chronic threat mode.
That sounds exhausting. And I think it explains why so many people don't recognize it while it's happening.
But here's the part that surprised me most when I first read this research. Most people assume workplace bullying is rare, or that only obviously toxic workplaces have it. But studies from the Workplace Bullying Institute found that roughly 30% of adults in the United States have experienced being bullied at work, and around 19% have witnessed it. That's a huge number of people who know exactly what we're talking about.
1 in 3. Wait, I thought I was just overreacting to an old job. There was this person who would always say my ideas sounded interesting in a tone that made everyone laugh. I told myself it was just humor, but it happened every week, and I started over-preparing for every meeting.
And what did you do with that feeling?
Honestly, I told myself I was being too sensitive. I started bringing extra data points so I wouldn't get laughed at. I didn't call it bullying because there was no shouting, but it changed how I showed up at work.
That's a powerful example. The behavior might not have involved yelling, but if it was repeated, targeted, and had a social power component, your brain labeled it as a threat, even while your rational mind made excuses.
So my body knew something my conscious mind kept denying?
Exactly. Your nervous system treats social exclusion and status threats a lot like physical danger. That's why you felt the stomach tighten. Your brain was running threat detection every time you walked into those meetings. And the reason you didn't name it is partly cultural. We're taught that adults should handle things professionally, so we suppress the word bullying. But that suppression has a cost.
But why didn't anyone else step in? There were 7 or 8 of us in the room. Some of them were my friends. They would laugh too, or just stare at their laptops.
This is where social psychology gets fascinating and a little uncomfortable. In group settings, we often assume someone else will help. It's called the bystander effect, famously studied in the 1960s by psychologists Bibb Latané and John Darley. In their experiments, the more people present, the less likely any one person was to help. Not because they're bad people, but because responsibility spreads thin. Every person in that meeting might have thought, well, someone closer will say something. Or maybe I'm misreading it.
That's exactly what I told myself. I misread it. So we all just sat in the silence.
And there's another layer called pluralistic ignorance. Each person looks around, sees nobody else reacting, and concludes that the group thinks it's fine. So everyone privately felt uncomfortable, but publicly stayed calm, and that public calm became the reality of the room.
Oh wow. So we all co-created a reality where the bullying wasn't real.
That's a great way to say it. And the target sees that same group calm, which makes them doubt themselves even more. That's what can turn a workplace into what some researchers call a toxic social system. No single villain is needed. The structure keeps the behavior invisible and stable.
So if we want to spot it, what are the actual signs? Because I clearly missed it.
Researchers often group workplace bullying into a few categories. Work-related bullying might be impossible deadlines, having your work constantly changed at the last minute, or being excluded from information you need. Person-related bullying includes gossip, humiliation in front of others, having your achievements ignored, or being socially frozen out. There's also verbal or physical intimidation, but that's less common in adult workplaces.
Social freezing out sounds terrifying. Adults can be so clinical about it. They just don't invite you to the meeting, or they don't mention the team lunch.
Right. Exclusion is an efficient form of aggression because it leaves no bruise. The neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger and her colleagues found that social exclusion activates brain regions associated with physical pain. The same system that says ouch when you stub your toe also says ouch when people shut you out. So when someone is left off a group chat, the pain is real.
That makes me feel less dramatic for how much it hurt in my old job.
I'm glad. Because once you understand the mechanism behind your silence, you might actually have more compassion for yourself. This isn't a character flaw, it's how social brains respond to exclusion and status threat.
Okay, so what can someone do if they're the target? Because in the moment you can't always quit, and calling someone a bully at work feels like pouring gasoline on the situation.
I would not suggest using the word bully in the room. Instead, psychologically, the first step is to shift from self-doubt to documentation. When you notice a pattern, start a simple private log. Date what was said or done, who was there, what the impact was. This isn't about building a legal case at first, it's about restoring your own reality. It helps your brain move out of that fog of, did that happen? Am I being too sensitive?
Interesting. Instead of trying to convince people, you first convince yourself.
Yes, and that matters, because bullies often rely on gaslighting, making the target question their own perception. Gaslighting is like someone slowly turning down the light in a room and telling you it's sunny outside. Eventually, you stop trusting your own eyes. A written record can become the lamp you turn back on. It can also reveal whether it's a genuine pattern or a one-off conflict, which is useful before deciding next steps.
What about bystanders? I want to not be the guy staring at my laptop next time.
The research on bystander intervention shows that even small acts can change the group dynamic. You don't have to confront the aggressor in the moment. You can check in privately with the target afterwards. I noticed that meeting got really intense. How are you doing? That breaks the silence and the pluralistic ignorance.
Just a private check-in does that?
It does. It tells the target they're not invisible. It also gives them a witness, which is psychologically huge. If it's safe, you can also redirect a situation in the moment. For example, if someone's idea is being mocked, you might say, I'd like to hear more about that actually. You're not attacking anyone. You're changing the social rewards.
That's smart. You're taking away the audience's laughter and giving attention to the person who was just targeted.
Exactly. Bullies often operate through social reward. If the group stops rewarding the behavior with nervous laughter or silence, the behavior loses some of its function.
Why does the bully do it in the first place? Are these just bad people?
This is where it gets even more interesting. Most workplace bullying is not about evil. It's often about social status, insecurity, and organizational competition. Some people learn that putting others down increases their own relative status. In a competitive culture, bullying can even be rewarded with visibility, promotions, or access to leaders. So the behavior makes psychological sense, even when it's harmful.
That's disturbing, because it means the system can teach people to be cruel without meaning to.
Yes. There's also a concept from social psychology called the fundamental attribution error. We tend to see other people's bad behavior as proof of their character, while our own bad behavior gets explained by circumstances. So bystanders often think, oh, she's just stressed or that's just his personality, rather than seeing the behavior as a choice shaped by culture.
So the workplace becomes a playground for our brain's shortcuts.
Exactly. And that's why this episode matters. Once you see the invisible structures, you can't unsee them. You start noticing when a team meeting quietly becomes a hierarchy enforcement ritual.
Wow, that phrase is going to stick with me.
There's a concept called psychological safety. Social scientist Amy Edmondson has studied it for decades. It's the shared belief that a team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. When psychological safety is low, people hide mistakes, sit in silence, and bullying can flourish. When it's high, people speak up, check in with each other, and address small tensions before they become patterns.
So it's not just about punishing bullies. It's about changing what the group rewards.
Precisely. We often want one dramatic fix, but psychological research suggests small, consistent changes shape culture more. A leader who says, I want to hear the dissenting view, or who notices an interruption and says, let's let her finish, can shift the unspoken rules.
That's actually hopeful, because I can do that tomorrow.
And if today's episode is helping you see the workplace a little more clearly, I hope you'll subscribe to Mind Decoded and share it with someone who might need the same clarity. New episodes drop every day.
And while you're at it, think about this. Have you already recognized a moment from your own job or from a past job where the group stayed quiet when it shouldn't have? That recognition is the first step.
So here's a question for everyone listening. In your next meeting, try to notice not only what is said, but what the group is silently agreeing not to notice. A tiny gesture may reveal more than the entire agenda.
That's a good one. I'm going to watch for the silent agreement now.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next one.